word chai come from? Does it come from China?
Okay. Food for thought for me. I'll try to find out and get back to you on this.
Yeah, it would be nice to know, because tea came into the world through China. I think even in Assam, the tea plants were really brought in from China, but I'm not sure, so I'm not an expert on that.
Little bit of history that I know about it, sir, is that it were the Buddhist monks who used this tea leaves just in warm water as purgative to begin with, and it was during the Industrial Revolution that they started mixing milk with it, milk and sugar, and that was to kill fatigue for the industrial workers in England.
I see.
So that's when it got massively popularized across Europe. But to begin with, in China itself, they were the Buddhist monks using it as a medicinal purgative, just to ease themselves in the morning. So,
in India, when the British brought tea, I'm told, to popularize it, they used to offer it free on the roadside to any passerby.
Yeah.
That's how it caught on.
That's how internet and bandwidth is getting popularized. We'll start charging subsequently, maybe.
Yeah, I'll take a short nap.
Got the video on it.
ऐसा डीसीएल मला वाटते ऐसा डीसीएल रोड देख
But then there's not. Huh? मेरा वहाँ को webinar draft.
Natik, can you just run us through the schedule, like welcome address, and then.
Yes. As the name Compass suggests, we are trying to create an environment where all of us can talk. We will be having lectures on various subjects and issues, and it will be a truly interdisciplinary talk. At the very outset, I would like to thank Principal Ma'am, Vice Principal Ma'am, Director IQAC, and our teacher in charge, Ravi Nandan Sir, for helping us out in getting this event into flight. Right.
Thank you, Nazik. Padma Shri Professor Dinesh Singh, sir, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues of Hindu College and from other institutions, and my very dear students. Greetings on behalf of Hindu College and a hearty welcome to you all. It is a very huge privilege and honor for the college to have a distinguished personality, a visionary leader, and an inspirational academician amidst us today to address us all in this webinar series Campus, organized by the Student Forum Caucus under the aegis of IQAC of Hindu College. Sir, we extend a very warm welcome to you and are so thankful for your time and interest in this event of ours. COVID-19 and the resulting lockdown and social distancing is an altogether novel experience, an uncharted territory, which is having an enormous impact on the world. We might speak achingly of our pre-COVID existences and would like to believe that even if it is going to be after a long spell, there will be a return to normalcy. But like the century-old Spanish flu or even the World War, the same principle applies in the current pandemic times, which is that life has changed abruptly, profoundly, and irretrievably. And so the fact is that we will go hurtling into a new era. Like any other sector, education has been and will continue to be vastly impacted under these circumstances. We are already witnessing this effect. Beginning March, restrictions on physical movement created the necessity for students and educators to switch over their medium of teaching learning to online classes in a matter of just a few days. Now, the USPs of digital or technology-driven system is that it has the capacity to deliver on the promise of access, equity, and quality, all at the same time. But are we fully equipped for these deliveries? In these 2 months, we have seen that our education system, which happens to be the largest in the world, faces an acute problem of accessibility of education to a large student population due to, as you all know, not so advanced digital infrastructure and the low internet penetration rates, amongst other socio-economic issues as well. Naturally, the pertinent questions are how to provide equitable model of education wherein every student has an equal right to the educational content. Our system needs time and planning both to ensure the paradigm shift from traditional methods of teaching to e-learning. The education system had already been reeling under a number of challenges, including paucity of funds, shortage of faculty, outdated curricula, absence of job-creating avenues, lack of research-driven curriculum, among others. All these have further aggravated by issues arising specifically due to COVID-19, such as deprivation of field work or laboratory work to build practical-based knowledge in the already feeble component of hands-on learning, shocking halt to children's societal life, environment and learning, and more. And another very important aspect which tends to get ignored is the vulnerability of students to a plethora of psychological issues. The need for reform in the higher education system is felt more than ever before. And so today in his talk on reforming education in the backdrop of COVID, Professor Dinesh Singh will give us so many aspects of what could be the road for the future for education system in India. Am I not audible? I'm getting some, is it okay?
You are audible, ma'am, yes.
Sir, Professor Singh does not need any introduction. In fact, he is too tall and big for us in every sense of these words. Yet I will make an attempt. A recipient of the prestigious civilian award of the country, the Padma Shri, Professor Singh served as the 21st Vice-Chancellor of the University of Delhi. He is presently the Chancellor of K.R. Mangalam University. He has been a Distinguished Senior Hackspace Fellow at Imperial College, London, and has been invited to give lectures at various prestigious platforms and institutions, such as the Fudan University, University of London, University of Houston, Association of Commonwealth Universities, London, to name a few. He has also been a member of numerous distinguished panels and committees, including the Jnanpith Award Jury, President of Ramanujan Mathematical Society, Chairman of Executive Committee of National Science Center, to name a few. As the Vice-Chancellor of Delhi University, we have seen him as a man having the rare combination of visionary ideas that he then transformed into reality with decisive and effective action. Especially for the university, his innovative ideas, radical and inspirational thinking made the system take a giant leap towards redefining education and enabling the youth. Some of his pioneering works in these reforms were some of them which I find extremely interesting and very special. The first one is Jnanodaya Express, which was a special, and this is especially for the current students. You should know that the Jnanodaya Express was a special, unique train journey. 4 of these happened in his tenure. They were specially for the students of Delhi University to enable teaching learning on wheels. And while traveling all across the landscape of the nation, from east to west, north to south, learning various things hands-on, getting good exposure of field work, and doing small research projects. There was also an inbuilt library, which was a library on wheels, and it was extremely exciting to be in this project, in this initiative. Several students of Hindu College had also participated and found it extremely thrilling, and we have a report of all that with us. Then the second thing, which we see as a major change and a positive change in his times, were the digital empowerment of the students. The ICT-enabled classrooms, the classrooms that we see today in our colleges are mainly, and the ones which are ICT-enabled are because Sir had taken this initiative. And we had about 40 classrooms where of almost every college got computers, got projectors and projector screens. And so that was to have an integrated, flavor of integrated learning while you're doing the classroom teaching. Students were given away laptops. About 1,000 laptops were procured for each college by the Delhi University, and it was a great gesture. And alongside that, another very important, change that was brought in his time was the Antardhwani, which was a festival, or which was brought to bringing the university community together to celebrate creativity, innovations, experiments, and achievements in a shared enterprise. Then another one, which I would also like to mention about our college in this, is the interdisciplinary research programs that were initiated from 2010 onwards. This happened, that there were interdisciplinary projects given away to colleges where 2 or more departments could join in and have as much as 10 undergraduate students. A 10 lakh grant for those projects was given, and given extremely good platform for the students to get an flavor of what is research, what is their life, and would they like to continue with that kind of discipline or not. So it was a wonderful initiative, and you will still remember it. In 4 or 5 years this went on for. So I think, and I would like to at this stage mention that, Sir, we have been so inspired by your innovation project initiative that in our college, with our own funds and the governing body and the teachers together through the IQAC, have now started this interdisciplinary project initiative in our own college. We have given away 16 such projects this year to the students, to the faculty members who have given projects of interdisciplinary nature, and have taken 10 students under each project. Not such a huge grant of 10 lakh per month, per year, little less than that, but I think it will be able to meet our needs and would be able to give the exposure to the students. And also that we have, with the kind of thrust that was given in that time and is being continued for research work, that we have come up with a dedicated building for the research by the undergraduate students and faculty in our college, which is going to be called the Research Center for Interdisciplinary Studies, and it's fast building up. It's a 4-story building, and we are soon going to finish off with the civil work, and then the equipments are coming. We have had quite a number of philanthropists who are pitching in for doing the equipment work for it. NBCC has given us a good charity or a donation that has happened. So we are trying to build some kind of a research atmosphere and a good learning experience for the students. Thank you so much, sir, for being here today with us. And I'm sure all the participants are looking forward to what is going to be a delight to hear. And we hope that our efforts to bring together the series will be worth your time. Thanks once again.
Sure. Thank you, Naitik. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are able to access my shared screen. In the next 3 to 4 minutes, I would be running you through a series of slides that would set the agenda background for today. Well, to go into a little statistics before we begin, India has the largest student population anywhere in the world, with more than 800 universities, including central, state, deemed, and private universities. 8.15% of Indians are graduates as per census of 2011. By today's estimates, the number would be larger. However, there exists a set of factors that continuously enfeeble the Indian higher education system. These, in brief, are the kind of mode of evaluation, the reduction of employment opportunities for graduates who enter the job market after finishing their graduation, the right course for the right student, and making more accessible to all sections of the society. The pandemic has turned every norm into an exception and every exception into a norm. And hence, open source digital learning solutions and learning management software have taken the lead. Through rapid internet penetration by means of telecom companies and by various measures of the government, internet penetration has occurred at a very fast rate. And today, more than a higher estimate and a higher proportion of people are able to access the internet. However, in the extent of digitization, it would also be fair to compare the recent reforms in higher education in the light of technology. These include the shift to choice-based credit system, the introduction of National Entrance Cum Examination Trust for medicine admissions, providing accreditation to universities via National Institution Ranking Framework, and the publication of the draft NEF. However, there exist two questions that need to be answered post-COVID. How do we look to enhance the quality of research in Indian institutions is question number one. And the second question is how do we enhance individual participation online? Ending on that note, I would like to thank you all. And now without further ado, I would like to call upon our today's speaker, Professor Singh, to deliver his address. Sir, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. What you should have said was the internet is yours. And I mean it in a broader sense than just talking to colleagues from Hindu College. But thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity greatly. And I have always been a big admirer of what goes on at Hindu College from my student days. And I'm happy to see that the college is thriving. And Dr. Srivastava and her colleagues are doing a very commendable job. And I can see that the student cohort is extremely alert, and it bodes well for India's future to see such good things happening. I have been asked to speak on education, particularly in the context of what has happened due to the COVID crisis. And I'll see how best I can sort of handle the two issues of what is wrong with education, how to reform it, particularly now that the COVID crisis is also upon us. I cannot claim to have any final solutions. I would share what little I have gained. And let me tell you that what little I have understood is not my wisdom. It really comes to me from much, much greater, much wiser people. And I'm just going to share it with you on the basis of some of the experiments that we have run at Delhi University and at other places. So, I have always wondered, everybody says, so-and-so is educated, so-and-so is not educated. When you have living room conversation, when you want to run someone down, is not very educated. And I've always dwelt on two things. In a very derogatory sense. And then they also seem to imply that education is something that we must acquire by entering some institution and acquiring certain formal qualifications. And it leaves me nonplussed. The people that I have admired in my life, whom I've held as role models, who have inspired me, would not fit under this category at all. And I speak of Bhagwan Buddha, Bhagwan Mahavir, Jesus Christ, Nanak, Kabir. Where did they go? What university did they attend? What qualifications did they acquire? Which entrance exam did they clear? And if they were not wise, who would be wise? And on each one of these names that I have taken, there have been thousands and thousands of doctoral dissertations on their work, their lives, their teachings in university after university. And yet none of them had anything to do with a university at all as we understand a university today. So we need to mull this. We need to think about this. Were they not educated in our liberal, broad sense of the word? And it isn't just such people who had a spiritual bent of mind or who went on the spiritual path or the path of divinity. There were all kinds of other people. Michael Faraday, the greatest scientist of his time, and one of the greatest that the world has known, had not studied beyond the second grade of school. He had to leave school in the second grade. And yet he became the greatest scientist of his time and one of the greatest of all times. Mendel, who sort of gave us genetics, as we understand all these happenings in life sciences, including the pathways to solve the corona crisis, whose work has been so fundamental. Well, Mendel was sort of hard put to acquire a proper university education. He had enormous trouble getting into that, and none of those things played a major role in his life. And you know what Darwin said? He's reported to have said that he learned much more in the pubs of Cambridge than he did in the classrooms. So we need to think about these things. Srinivas Ramanujan had no university education. He became Ramanujan outside of, in fact, the university through which he tried to get education failed him repeatedly. There are other instances. Newton actually did all the work that made him the greatest scientist the world will know, probably, arguably. He did all that work when Cambridge shut down for the plague and he went home. So the work was done at home. All these things must make us think on what is the purpose of a university system as we put it up today. And more importantly, we need to understand what is education. And all the names that I have taken today have a few things in common, all of them. And I'll try and give you a definition of education and a pathway through these personalities, their work, their lives, and then I'll see how we can connect it in today's times when the COVID crisis is upon us. So, I'm a mathematician and I love to, create precise, concise definitions, and I like to keep things simple. So I'd love to define education, and I've done this repeatedly, and many of you may have heard this definition also. I have a very simple definition of what is education. It is a personal journey. It's a journey. It is a search within. We look inside and we discover who we are, and we begin to get educated. And how do you do that? Well, each one of us, I believe, and I believe this firmly, each one of us is born with a drumbeat within. Jiska Anjuji ne abhi naam liya, antardhwani, the drumbeat within. And if we discover this drumbeat, and then we start marching in harmony with this inner drumbeat in the real world, that's when you begin to get educated. And let me illustrate that very quickly. Srinivas Ramanujan, how did he discover his drum beat? Well, he came across a very ordinary, a tuition center sort of book on mathematics when he was in high school. And that set his mind on fire. He discovered his drum beat. It was mathematics. And then he began to march in the real world in harmony with this drum beat, regardless of how everyone else was marching. What do I mean by that? Well, he just began to practice the drum beat's rhythm. He began to walk in harmony. In other words, he kept doing mathematics regardless of everything else. And as he kept doing that, he got more and more educated in the literal sense and even in the higher sense. He kept evolving. That is what is called getting educated. How did Ramanujan do that? As I said, he came across this solitary book, a very ordinary book, but that was enough. An external stimulus coming from the rhythm of the book. Gandhiji, it happened to him at a much earlier age. He was probably in the 5th or 6th grade when he happened to see the play Satyavadi Raja Harishchandra. And it had a profound impact on him. So the rhythm, the drumbeat of the play, adherence to truth no matter what the cost, appealed to Gandhiji. It struck a chord within and it began to resonate and he discovered his own drumbeat. And that very day, Mahatma Gandhi took a pledge to himself that for the rest of his life, he will adhere to the truth no matter what the cost. And from that day onwards, all of Gandhi's life is nothing but trying to stay with the truth in the real world. And that is how he became Mahatma Gandhi. It happens to many, many. How did Michael Faraday become what he became? Well, when he was taken out of school and he got a little older, and they were extremely poor, his parents, they needed to find ways and means of supporting the family. So Faraday was apprenticed to a bookbinder. God's hand was on Faraday. He could have been apprenticed to a blacksmith. He could have been apprenticed to some other person. But no, he was apprenticed to a bookbinder. God's hand took him there. And he was pretty good at bookbinding. So those books that used to come there to be bound, excuse me, Faraday would do a great job. And in doing a great job, he had to go through the pages carefully. And he began to read those books. And in no time, he found that the books on science would resonate with him. And that set him forth on his journey. He discovered his drumbeat, adherence to science. And he kept reading those books, and there used to be a good number of books that would come to that shop for binding. And that's how he discovered his drumbeat, kept marching in harmony with that drumbeat, and finally became the greatest scientist of his time. So you need some sort of external stimulus to discover your drumbeat. And then once you know what your drumbeat is, you need to start marching in the real world. And that's how you start getting educated. Now, a very pertinent question should arise at this point. So what does a university or a college or a school have to do with this? Well, people like Faraday, Gandhi, Ramanujan, all those were people who had extraordinary gifts, I presume. They may even have been lucky, I cannot say. Maybe they were more alert. But for common people like us, we need more patience, we need to persevere more, we need to have greater exposure to things. So we need to be able to discover our drumbeat by harking to many drumbeats in the world around us. That is why I always say, let us learn to treat the world as a university. And the world is full of drumbeats. And then when you start listening to them, some tune, some rhythm, some drumbeat will begin to resonate with you. It happened to Tendulkar. He suddenly found that that's all he wanted to do, play cricket. He hardly has any education. He barely finished high school. But look his drum beat and he stayed steadfast as a cricketer. And look where he is. He has the Bharat Ratna, of course. He did not set out to get the Bharat Ratna. He did not set out to become a great cricketer. He just said, I will play cricket because that's what. Be true to your belief. Be true to your belief. And everything else will follow. Mirabai said it so well. Mira ke Prabhu giridhar nagar duja na koi. There's nothing else. To the exclusion of everything else, she decided to march in harmony with the drumbeat that said, do Krishna Bhakti. No matter what the cost. That is the thing we must look for. That is the platform that a university must provide so that young minds, when they get together, can look at drum beats and begin to discover that which resonates with them. It should start happening at the level of school. Let's, for the time being, just leave schools out of it as much as we can. So that is the challenge. Of course, there are other things we must look out. So how do we get hold of these things? How do we make sure that we accord a platform to young minds so that they can find their drum beats? Well, let me again go back to the great names that I took before you. Bhagwan Bodh, Jesus Christ, Kabir, Faraday, Newton, Mendel, Mahatma Gandhi, all of them. Do you know what was the other thing that was common to them? They were exceptionally good with the use of their hands. Exceptionally good. Kabir was a weaver. Gandhiji was so gifted with his hands. He wasn't just a charkha. He could do a million things with his hands. He could also make shoes. He was great at gardening, at farming. He was great at administering medical help. He was so good with his hands. Faraday, I told you he was a great bookbinder. That's why he loved to, bind those books so well. And in doing a great job, he became what he became. Did you know that Fleming, when he discovered penicillin, how did it happen? Fleming used to clean his lab with his own hands every day. And he was cleaning those petri dishes on which he had performed some experiment with some samples of chemicals. And in washing those petri dishes, he came across particular color stains on those petri dishes, which intrigued his curiosity. Had he given that job to a lab assistant, he would never have learned how to discover penicillin. So, luck and accidentally luck descending upon us only happens when we are really, ready for that. As Thomas Jefferson said, this great president of the United States, that I've been a very lucky man in life. The harder I have worked, the luckier I have been. So that's the lesson we need to understand. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, as they say, was apprenticed to his father as a carpenter till the age of 12. He worked with his hands. All of them. Mendel was an extraordinarily gifted gardener. Extraordinarily gifted. He worked very hard as a gardener. Had he not done that, he could never have discovered the laws of genetics because he grew those pea plants generation after generation with his own hands. And that's when he began to observe a pattern. And that's how the laws of genetics were born. So the thing I wish to emphasize is to discover your drum beat. You also need to be adept with your hands. And then you have to have a certain approach that does not, at the beginning, make you narrow-minded intellectually. It should always be a healthy combination of things, transdisciplinarity. There should be a harmony between the sensory, the moral, and the world around us. There must be a complete balance. Do university systems do that to us today? Will they give us an environment where when I enter, I learn to gradually find out what is my drum beat? That doesn't seem to be happening. It doesn't seem to be happening because I am forced when I'm in my school to make up my mind on what I want to do and what is the choice that I get. These are so-called academic disciplines. You be a mathematician, be a physicist, be a doctor, be this. Such a narrow, limited choice. How do I know what really suits me? What is my drum beat? Until I'm given a chance to experience a few things and then start moving in the direction that I really wish to move. That hardly happens. Broader base, certain degree of transdisciplinarity, a certain liberal approach to what is knowledge and what is not. There is hardly anything in the world which is not knowledge. Skills and knowledge are just two sides of the same coin. All the big names that I have taken before you were skilled craftsmen, all of them. Even Einstein, very few people know this, that Einstein was extraordinarily good with his hands. Did you know that he had more than 50 patents and inventions to his credit? He invented the world's first automatic camera, that he invented the world's first modern safe refrigerator. He was really good with his hands. It isn't just theoretical work that he did. To manage his father's electromagnetic goods factory. And he was so good at managing that factory that he almost gave up his career as a physicist. So let me re-emphasize, if you wish to really be educated, you have to discover your drumbeat. How do you discover your drumbeat? You need to be in an environment which exposes you to various drumbeats, which you experience firsthand, hands-on, and for that, do not limit yourself. Do not say, oh, this is not mathematics and this is mathematics or so. Those are the tragedies of our modern education. Did you know that India's tradition in the past was never like this? I am so fond of repeating this story of Gautam Haridrumat. I say this story all the time because I want young minds to imbibe. It exemplifies the Indian knowledge tradition. Gautam, and there is much to be learned of how we ran our knowledge systems in the past. And I don't want to do it for chauvinistic reasons. So don't do that because we were great, we were a Vishwa Guru. Oh, that is all baloney. We shouldn't dwell on that. We were great. Yes, we were Vishwa Guru. Fine. I don't want to dwell on that. What are the lessons we can imbibe from those days that we can put into practice? And the story of Haridrumat and Satyakam is marvelous. And these are historical recordings of historical beings. So they carry great value. They're not just theoretical learnings. So what is the story? So the first thing that I must tell you is Haridrumat was a great guru. He ran a gurukul. This story is from the Chandogya Upanishad. And to his gurukul, a boy of 12 comes to seek admission. So here's the first lesson. In India, you were largely homeschooled till the age of 12. This tradition continued for a long time. I mean, as little as I've understood history, and I'm no historian, I have learned that this was a strong tradition in India. I am talking of a time a few hundred years before the time of Jesus Christ. But the tradition continued for a long, long time. Anyway, this boy of 12 comes to the Gurukul of Haridrumat and seeks admission. And Haridrumat asks him, we admit only Brahmins. What is your lineage? This is what I mean by an enlightened test. You know, we have become so fond of testing in India. We test at the drop of a hat. एक entrance exam कर दो, एक बीच का exam कर दो, एक ये exam कर दो. We examine all the time. And we forget that an exam is only good as the person who sets it. So if the person being examined is above the person who's examining, there is a total mismatch. And we don't even dwell on those things, but leave that aside. This is a great exercise in how we should test. So, and the boy says, I asked this question of my mother when I set forth for your Gurukul, and my mother said that I have worked as a maid in many homes. Many men have taken advantage of me. I have no idea who your father is, but you should proclaim yourself proudly as Satyakam, son of Jabala the maid. And when he utters these words, Haridrumat says, in Haridrumat's eyes, he has passed the test. That's an enlightened test. He says, son, that is the only hallmark of a true Brahman, adherence to truth. A Brahman is not by birth. And therefore, I admit you. You see, this is how testing must happen. We tend to design tests in India so that we can mess up the child. We want to sort of set a question in our question, make that this person will take 100 years to answer them. And let me tell you, I have so much evidence of people who have set question papers in all kinds of exams where I have personally asked them if they could solve those questions, and they couldn't. And they love to do this to students. Look at how Haridrumat does this. Look at how he admits it. But then, here is the real lesson that comes to us. You know, once he's admitted, Haridrumat doesn't say, go now learn the Vedas. Go sit in a classroom, recite them. No. He gives him 100-odd head of cattle. And he says, go into the forest and do not return until they have multiplied threefold. Think about this. Did you know that for a long time, not just in India, in many parts of the world, wealth was measured in terms of how many head of cattle a person owned, even a nation? This is an exercise in wealth management. This is such a practical, hands-on, down-to-earth exercise. See how it is connected to the real world. And see how much of transdisciplinarity is embedded in it. Satyakam sets forth, and he does not return until they have multiplied threefold. And when he does, Haridrumat tells him that I can see enlightenment on your face. You have become educated. And who taught you? This is a long story. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but that's the point I'm trying to make. And the Mimamsa school of philosophy, this ancient school of philosophy. Today, when we talk of philosophy, we think of some dreamer sitting in a room somewhere, everything shut away from the world. No, the Mimamsa school of philosophy says so clearly that knowledge without action is meaningless. Think about that. Now let's come back to our modern systems. When we were in school, I remember this, and I've checked so much with so many people, and it still holds. You enter any lab. First of all, whenever you're asked to perform an experiment, you know the answer beforehand, whether it's a school or a college. Then how it ceases to be an experiment. An experiment is an experiment only as long as you don't know the outcome and when you learn something new from it. But tell me one experiment that you performed in school where you've tried to learn something new which came out of that. Never. I remember when I used to enter my lab, whether it was biology, physics, or chemistry, the first thing the lab attendant would sort of very sternly admonish you, don't touch anything. My God, if you don't touch anything, how will you really do new things? But we were never allowed. All the experiments that we performed, we knew beforehand. That holds true even today. I remember we used to have 12 salts in chemistry to analyze. We could tell the salt by just holding it in your hand. There was nothing new, nothing experimental. We just kept repeating it. And I checked today, even then they do the same thing. Have they ever put down in the curriculum that let students pick up the soil of their school, the earth from their school, and analyze what are the chemicals in it, what are the salts in it? So many good and interesting things could come out of it. What are the microbes in it? You could do a transdisciplinary search by picking up the soil of your school. You could do physics in it, you could do chemistry in it, you could do biology in it, and believe me, you could also do mathematics in it. This is not the time to explain. If at some stage later when the COVID crisis is over and you still remember me, I'll come over to your college to tell you how in just picking up the soil of your college or school, you can bring in hands-on transdisciplinary knowledge which will enlighten you. And always do this as far as possible in groups because we learn from each other. A few days ago, I conducted a survey with a bunch of extremely senior former students of my college, which is just across the road from you. Many of them, and they've done extremely well. They're very well-known people. Some of them have or are running India. And I asked them in confidence, so I will never give you names. I asked them, tell me honestly, how much did you really learn in the classroom? And how much did you learn otherwise? And that helped you in your life. And they tell me, all of them, without fail, that the classroom experience almost gave them nothing, hardly, a little bit. What really mattered to them were the peers around them, the library that they made use of, the time they spent in the cafe, all that equipped them to do what they really wanted to do in life. Some of them are India's greatest mountaineers. St. Stephen's doesn't teach mountaineering, but it had a hiking and mountaineering club. Now, is that not education? But catch Delhi University giving you credit for becoming a good mountaineer. You learn so much through mountaineering, but they will never do that. Think about all these things. Why are we like this? Why do we not treat sports as a learning experience? Did you know that G.H. Hardy, the man who discovered Ramanujan, his most important paper, and I'm Hardy's mathematical grandchild, so I can speak with some authority. Hardy's most important paper comes from playing cricket. His idea is from a game of cricket. How do I make this world understand in my country that there is no exclusivity between domains, that they are all permeable, that you have to move from one to the other? We just don't seem to understand that. So the platform we must give is something like that, a generous, liberal platform, and allow each student, each child to gradually discover the drumbeat and evolve through that towards that which resonates with the heart. It could be anything. And remember, always, knowledge and skills have to go hand in hand. Our experiences are all blackboard driven, always in the classroom. That doesn't really help us much. Everything that you learn in a classroom is already there in a book. It's already there on the web. And we don't seem to want to make use of it. And then, of course, we have become so political interference, bureaucratic interference, and our own ineptitude that we have killed our systems. Let me illustrate with just two examples. When I became Vice-Chancellor, I thought, let me see if I can help my students get good employment. So I spoke to one of India's top multinational finance firms in Mumbai, and they are expanding in a big way in India, and they had hundreds of jobs at a very basic level. They said, we don't want to look for any specialization. We just want someone who has a graduate degree, a bachelor's in anything. It could be history, economics, whatever. But we want them to have reasonable communication skills, reasonable IT skills. So they should be able to open a laptop, open MS Word or stuff like that. And they should be able to sort of be a little critical, simple. And they were paying something like 25 to 30,000 rupees. This is about, I think 8 or 9 years ago, 9 years ago. And that wasn't bad. So, we advertised widely in our colleges. Of course, not many people from your college or the college across the road applied, but we had huge numbers of applications from across all our colleges. And we looked at the resumes and shortlisted 1,200 of the best. And then a whole team flew down from Mumbai to tackle these students. And we did not allow the firm to know anything about the student in terms of his social background or his college. And they did a very sincere job of interviewing students one by one over a long period of time. And guess what? They could hire only 3 out of 1,200 of the best applicants. Do you realize we're doing nothing with these kids? Not one of them has discovered their drumbeat. You look at all the people who have discovered their drumbeats, they have good communication skills. They have good other skills. They have a transdisciplinary approach to knowledge. They have a hands-on approach to knowledge. But none of my kids had that. There's something else I want you to know. Once in Sydney, as Vice-Chancellor, I happened to take a cab which was being driven by a young Indian. We got talking. Guess what? He had a Bachelor of Commerce honors degree from one of our best-known colleges, known for his extraordinarily high cutoffs. Those cutoffs have made news in the newspapers every year. He said he had a first-class degree from there in commerce, came to Australia, migrated. He said, I thought I will come and conquer the world. And they told him that you know nothing of use, that he couldn't get a single job. He had to re-educate himself. And he said that to re-educate myself, to pay my fees, I started driving a cab. And he began to weep. And he said, they cheat us. He mentioned his college and he said, they cheat us. They do nothing worthwhile with us. And he pleaded with me to do something. Just think about this. And if you were to think a little and dwell a little and work a little hard on the web, you will find that the internet is full of expressions of students from almost every institution of India which say the same things in their own words as the taxi driver in Sydney. All of them, from our IITs also. I've come across innumerable such expressions. Why is that happening? Because our systems stifle us. They don't give us the platform that we need. They don't allow, and also they should not burden you with so much. We want to teach this and this and this and this. God, this world is full of knowledge and you can never fathom but the most basic elemental stuff. So don't try and learn everything. Don't try and teach everything. Lighten up a little. Give them the habit of learning to learn. That is the thing we must give. And they should discover that drumbeat. What do we do instead? We have these huge fancy courses with a huge number of references. You learn this and you learn that. And what? We teach, suppose we do mathematics and we teach mathematics. I notice there are thousands of students who study maths at Delhi University, and we teach as if each one of them wants to become a Ramanujan. Hardly. Not even 5% are really interested in mathematics. But they're all forced to go through the rigors of what would make, hopefully, a Ramanujan out of you. And will it? Let me tell you something. Poor Ramanujan, his university kept failing him in Madras. Madras University refused to pass him. Suppose Ramanujan had come to me in these times when I was the Vice-Chancellor, and I am a mathematician, howsoever modest and humble, I still have the sense to understand that this is Ramanujan, the god of mathematics. As Vice-Chancellor, could I have done anything for him? Could I have admitted him into the BA program? No. Had I done that, an inquiry would have been set up against me. I would have been charge sheeted, and God knows what would have happened. Court cases would have followed. How did you do that? On the other hand, 100 years ago, what did Cambridge do with Ramanujan? They recognized his genius, just as hopefully I would have done, because I may not be a genius, but I know who is a genius. Cambridge recognized his genius. They took him there and without fuss gave him a PhD in mathematics. Without fuss. Forget giving a BA, MA, whatever. Over here, you'll have to sit for this entrance exam, then that entrance exam, then this, then that, and then finally you have to sit for this and an oral exam. They did nothing. They said, here is the god of mathematics. We honor ourselves by honoring him. So they gave him a proper formal PhD degree, not an honorary doctorate, a regular degree. And I've seen instances like that have happened repeatedly in many institutions across the world. Have we learned any lessons? That wasn't the story when Haridrumat does this to Satyakam. He allows him to come in. There are no rules that break him. No inquiry is set up against Haridrumat, and Satyakam becomes a legendary figure in the knowledge world. But now if you do this, you will be stifled. And they talk, I heard one of your students, when he was introducing me, mention the draft of the new education policy. You look at the policy, first of all, they keep talking about, Ivy League institutions, Harvard, MIT, so and so. Why are we so obsessed with them? Why don't we think of our own milieu? Education must be centered around the needs and challenges of our nation, of our society, to a large extent. And then when you expose these needs and challenges to the mind, then the mind begins to think and innovate. And then they begin to get educated. Will they know everything that is to know? God, you will never know everything that is to know, even if you spend 1,000,000 lifetimes. But at least you set their minds on fire so they know that they can learn whenever they want to learn. And then they keep learning their whole lives. That is not happening. If at all we wish to look at those institutions, that's the lesson we should imbibe. On the other hand, what are we imbibing? Create a policy, an overarching policy. What will this policy do? Neither Harvard, nor MIT, nor Cambridge, nor Oxford, nor Stanford, nor Imperial College came out of any policy. The one thing I noticed, and I've looked at the history, the one thing I noticed that has worked for them is when government policies were taken away from them and they were allowed freedom. And here we are saying we should be like them. And then we create this huge overarching policy that sits on our heads. And it sort of allows us, to be stifled. There is no freedom happening. So you think about all these things. And on the other hand, is everything they do worthwhile? I'm sure even young people here would know of the 2008 financial crisis that destroyed millions of lives across the world, particularly in the US. How did that happen? This crisis was caused by graduates of the famous institutions. Collectively, you look at them, look at where they studied, look at what knowledge they brought. They were from these so-called great institutions which taught them what to do in finance, in management and stuff like that, that allowed them to cheat and destroy lives of millions of people. Is that a worthwhile education? And yet, All of us want to go and gain specializations in finance, in management from such institutions. We had such a great manager in our own country, such great people, Mahatma Gandhi. Nobody could be a greater manager than Mahatma Gandhi. None of our institutions of knowledge ever talk about Gandhiji as a manager. None of them. These are hard times, and I don't want to depress people. My faith lies in the youth. My faith lies in the young. And I know this is India. Whether I like it or not, whether I do anything or not, India will keep doing well because our youth have the same DNA in them that helped Ramanujan and that helped Mahatma Gandhi. So therefore, I have faith. But in the crisis that has now enveloped us, how do we handle things? Remember, I told you at the beginning that the classroom experience never really enriches us too much. Everything that you learn in a classroom is now available, not just in a library, but on the net completely. We must learn to treat the web as a knowledge device. The teacher must transform himself or herself into a mentor rather than, mechanically mouthing lectures and notes and writing on the blackboard in a classroom. The teacher must provoke the minds of the young to participate in this journey of learning on an equal footing with them. Do not be embarrassed to say, I don't know, let's learn, let's discover. Set the right questions. It's the good questions that is half of good learning. And it must happen in a transdisciplinary fashion. Let me illustrate again. Many years ago when we were running those innovation projects at Delhi University, I had posed this as a question to undergraduates. What is the history of ice making without electrical power and what can we learn from it in today's context? And God, it isn't just about history. It's about physics. It's about economics. It's about management. And students came to me with such lovely solutions. And they did something which was hands-on. I discovered, I had learned that the Mughals, I knew this from my school days, that the Mughals used to make ice in Delhi during winter, tabulated underground, and then open those chambers in the summer. I'm told that those practices still exist in some parts of Kashmiri Gate. It's a great project, not just in history, it's also in physics, it's also in economics. It needs to be investigated. I'm not sure if it still holds, but some time back I was told that it still holds. Worth looking at. Now look, this is hands-on, this is transdisciplinary. You learn to work in groups and you are equipped for life. And when you do many of these, something will resonate with you. And when you are hands-on, then you also develop a spirit of adventure and entrepreneurship. That is so important. The spirit of entrepreneurship. All our education, whether it's in the IITs or in the universities, is largely designed to produce intellectual clerks. Think about this. We are always being trained to look for some kind of service. Things are changing in India. And when we changed them at the Innovation Center and in the 4-year undergraduate program at Delhi University, I could see how much entrepreneurship began to blossom. We had some marvelous things happening. And we gave at the Innovation Center complete freedom to students under a program called B.Tech Humanities, Design Your Degree. So they worked on projects largely and moved towards a specialization through their 4-year thing. Unfortunately, we had a very wise minister, a very enlightened lady who decided to destroy everything. But as I said, out of evil cometh good. And all the young minds that are listening to me today will certainly do some good things by thinking about what I have told them, by looking at the history of what we have done. But remember, in this corona crisis, nothing has been lost. Whatever you wish to learn, treat that as an experiment. I have done this 1,000,000 times. I have looked at ideas in physics. I have looked at ideas in the life sciences. I have looked at ideas in history. Everything is available on the web. Teachers must create groups within a classroom of 5 to 7 students, give them specific projects, give them a list of looking at sources on the web, which includes a huge library on YouTube. And there are all kinds of other resources. And then hold discussions like you and I are talking today. And you watch how much these groups, and ask each group to come up with a collective presentation and see how much learning will happen. I have conducted so many experiments since 1992 of using technology from the very basic to the most advanced. Let me tell you my most recent experiment. 5 months ago, I picked up 2 undergraduates of their university studying Hindi and some basic subject. No idea what is technology. They both had very basic smartphones on which all they did was play around with TikTok. So I brought them over. I just picked them up, brought them over. I had no idea whether they will do what I want them to do, but I took a chance. And I'm telling you, it works. So I gave them each a reasonable laptop and I equipped it with good software. I gave them a strong internet connection. And then I spoke to them for half an hour on what is Excel. And then I tossed a coin in their presence a few times to mark the frequency of heads and tails. Just like that. And then I said, can you see a pattern? And they could see nothing. So I told them that here is a problem for you. Go look up YouTube. I exposed them to YouTube. Altogether, it took me about 2 hours the first time. Go look up YouTube. I don't know enough about Excel myself. But I said, you'll find ways and means of creating a simulation whereby you can toss a coin on Excel 10,000 times and come back to me in a week to tell me whether you can see a pattern. Mind you, they had never heard of Excel before that. They came back to me in 4 days. Their minds were on fire. And they told me that they discerned a clear pattern about half the time you get a head and about half the time you get a tail. And from that day onwards, their journey began. And in 4 months, where are they now? They can do high-end probability theory simulations. Student who studied Hindi, probability simulations using Excel with graphs and animation, all on the web, all by themselves. I don't know. Am I ashamed of that? No. Are they do they hold me in derision or disrespect? No. We are friends on a journey together and we're both learning. And I keep challenging them and they don't know whether I have the answer or not. When they come back, I discover so many things. I don't know about the world, but I'm getting more educated in every sense of the word. That is the power of the web. That is the power of technology. We must provide those platforms. Let teachers take advantage of this and do not be embarrassed. If you don't, very soon economic forces will overtake us. Governments cannot fund universities the way they have been funding us. They cannot allow this kind of luxury that you teach history to 5,000 students as if they're all going to become, Toynbee or something like that. Hardly. And how many people will we keep employing in the government job? Government is running out of money. All governments across the world are running out of money. You have to learn to discover your drumbeat, and technology and IT is a huge resource. Think about this. In one short lecture, I can't do much more than this, but have tried to get you to understand that this is the way to handle the COVID crisis. So much can be done. I really believe that this is God's way of giving us a silver lining to the dark COVID-19 crisis cloud. So I hope I made myself clear a little bit. Thank you very much for this patient listening, and I'll be happy to interact with anyone who wishes to. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for that illuminating and gripping lecture for all of us. I am very, very sure that all of us enjoyed it a lot. So just to recapitulate a little bit about what sir has said during his lecture. First, he began with the questions of what is the purpose of a university system and what is education. In sir's opinion, education is a personal journey of discovering one's own inner drumbeat. He says that we must use our hands and engage with our physicality in a truly transdisciplinary manner. Further, he gave us an example from the Chandogya Upanishad where he talks about Hariduman and Satyakam when Hariduman took an enlightenment test of Satyakam. This is something that he says we should also imbibe in our education system today, something that all educators must learn from. Next, he moved on to the difference between in-classroom learning and outside classroom learning. How a lot of learning happens outside of the classroom itself and how the entire world is a university today. moving ahead, he talks about how there is no exclusivity between different domains and all domains are interrelated. And that is something we need to work upon as well. Coming to an end, sir also says that there is an immense Indian youth has the DNA has the same DNA as Gandhi and Ramanujan, and we can make great leaps and strides in this direction. Thus, coming to an end, how internet is making education more and more accessible, and how during the learning process, both the educator and the student are learning from each other. So that is also something that we have to keep in mind and include in our curriculum coming next. With this, we begin with the moderator question, sir. My first question to you is, do you see massive open online courses as a possible replacement for classroom teaching? And if so, what is your opinion on the undue scorn that these courses are subjected to by virtue of them being online courses?
Well, first of all, Shabdita, you summed up my lecture in 3 minutes and you summed it up very well. So I don't even know why I spoke for 40 minutes. I have no idea. I shouldn't have.
Thank you, sir.
And, to each his own. The web is a huge resource. MOOCs is one tiny fraction of what opportunities the web offers and what opportunities technology offers. Personally, if you ask me, I'm not at all in favor of MOOCs. I think they're a bad idea. But that's my opinion. Incidentally, many people in the West whom I consider wise have also begun to say the same thing about MOOCs. So the sooner we get out of the MOOCs syndrome, the better. But, there is so much on the web in all senses of the term. Even this interaction that I'm having with you, it should be recorded. And I have learned so much just listening to you right now. And you may have learned something from the examples I gave of the great ones, not me, the great ones. And even this is a learning resource. And maybe some people will be prompted to now go search how to make ice without electrical power. And there are huge numbers of resources on the web. And they could try that at home and they will learn physics and chemistry and history and so much. So you see, don't just rely on MOOCs, but a teacher must be there to do a little bit of hand-holding because teachers are more experienced. They are not necessarily great repositories of knowledge. None of us are. No one in the world will be. Remember what Newton said at the end of his life. And this is Newton, the great Newton. He says, I do not know how I may appear to the world. But to myself, I appear like a small child playing on the seashore, diverting his mind by finding a prettier shell here or a smoother pebble there, while the vast ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. So you will never discover that. Let's not get into that game. ये भी पढ़ा दो, वो भी पढ़ा दो. पढ़ना कैसे होता है, वो पढ़ा दो. जिंदगी बन जाएगी, उसी के माध्यम से अंतरात्मा की खोज हो जाएगी.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful lecture and for the wonderful answer. Now let me pose to you the second moderator question. Sir, you talked about how learning is important, which is, and how जैसे हमारी खोज हो जाएगी, like कैसे पढ़ना है, अगर ये सीख जाए तो हमारी खोज हो जाएगी. Sir, I want to pose to you some question more related to today's reality. I go in search of, let us say, curating a museum or maybe curating a gallery. How do I combine my quest for learning with sustenance?
So, देखो, मैं एक बात बताना चाहता हूँ. मैंने, from what little experience I've had of the real world around us. So, even Ramanujan, when he was in India, he had to sustain himself, particularly after he got married. And remember, I have looked at Ramanujan's writings in the English language. He was exceptionally good at the language. There is this misunderstanding people have that he didn't like reading Shakespeare, wasting his time with all that, because I'm not saying Shakespeare is a waste of time. Or Ramanujan, he just wanted to stick with maths. That's why he kept failing the English exam, not because he was weak in the English language per se. So he took a job in the Madras Port Trust as a clerk. And he began to sustain himself while even there, he would take the files, there used to be all kinds of files stored there, which had one side blank. And he would do mathematics on the reverse. But he had a lenient boss who allowed him to do that. So yes, you need to sustain yourself till you begin to evolve. Even great painters have started their journeys in life by being signboard painters. So you need to acquire some skills that will also help you in your journey. What are the skills? Basic IT skills, basic communication skills, basic language skills, and data. Basic data. I'm not talking of mathematics, just simple data. One of the things I lament is that I wrote an article some time back which was published and widely read and quoted, that somehow this country taught the world how to use data. I don't know if you are aware of this, but Chanakya in his Arthashastra brings in all these modern concepts of statistics that we use now, and he uses that to analyze data for good governance. And at this point in time, I find that not one university in India has looked at the corona crisis, looked at all the data and drawn conclusions. Nothing is happening. That kind of basic data, it does not require rocket science. I told you that kid in Hindi can use Excel and handle data so well. Those are the skills, and you can sustain yourself.
Yeah, sir, a small follow-up. When Ramanujan went out of India, he had to, if I'm not, had to survive on uh, what we say rice and curry porridge, if I am not wrong, when he went outside. So how I want to pose the reverse question now. If okay, if an individual is sustaining himself or herself while the quest for learning, how does the society sustain the quest for an individual's learning?
Oh, that's a very good question. By the way, Ramanujan wasn't being tortured in England. It's just that it was unfortunate. In fact, he loved to cook, and he would invite his friends to come and when he would cook, and he was very sensitive about his cooking. If you made a comment that he didn't like, he would get really upset. One time, Mahalanobis, the great statistician of India, he records that he made some comment about Ramanujan's cooking while he was eating there. Ramanujan was so upset, he left his rooms and walked away, walked out, didn't come back for a long time. So it wasn't that he was being tortured with his food or anything. Circumstances conspired to do what they did to him. So leave that aside. What exactly did you ask? I've lost the question now.
Yeah. So, sir, I believe the circumstances, like you said, the society couldn't sustain his
Yeah, okay.
quest for learning. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So, the British took good care of him and he saved a fair amount of money. When he came back to India, the British sanctioned a very handsome salary for him. But Ramanujan, being Ramanujan, wrote to the British that a large portion of the money be set aside for poor and talented students, even though he knew he was going to die. He knew that. He had predicted his date of death also 1 year in advance. He knew he was going to die. He knew his parents were dependent on him. His wife was dependent on him. Yet he gave away most of the money. Now, what happens when this great son of India, and do you know, I don't know how many of the young students know this, but the generation that just followed Ramanujan, just after Ramanujan in India, was greatly inspired by the story of Ramanujan. That was one of the great services this great son of India did. Subramaniam Chandrasekhar, the Nobel laureate, physics Nobel laureate, writes that when they were college students in Madras, he said, those were bad times. The British were dominating us. We were a demoralized nation. But he said there were 4 names that used to inspire us, give us strength and hope. Mahatma Gandhi, Rabindranath Tagore, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Srinivas Ramanujan. And I have read the lives of a whole generation of great scientists of India, all of whom were inspired by the example of Ramanujan. So, what does this nation do when he dies and his wife is left to her own devices? She's in complete poverty. Society doesn't take care of her. For decades, she was like that. It was only much later that Mrs. Indira Gandhi was told about her plight that the government sanctioned a grant for her. So, yes, society has to be alert. Society must look for talent and must support talent for its own well-being. Look at the amount of well-being Ramanujan caused in India. If for no other moral reason, for your own survival, we should do that.
Right. Thank you.
Before I pose the third moderator questions, I would request the audience to post their questions on the chat box so that we can recognize them in the next round. Sir, as you said that working with your hands is a great aspect of learning, and similarly the NEP also lays a lot of emphasis on vocational education and skill training, especially at secondary levels. Do you think that this step may perpetuate further inequalities amongst the lower economic strata and restrict its beneficiaries to only blue collar jobs?
Yes, yes, that's a very, very good question. I'm glad you asked it. You know, somewhere in India, we sort of differentiate between vocational as being inferior, and it's a stupid thing to do that. If the NEP does that, I'm so sorry to hear this. I've not looked at the revised version of the NEP. You know, I keep saying this, skills and knowledge are two sides of the same coin. I don't know how they will understand this. Don't differentiate. They go hand in hand. You know, Newton, how did he discover all those ideas on gravitation, those mathematical ideas? It's not that the apple fell on him and everything just happened. No. He was an extraordinarily gifted craftsman. He could do many things with his hands. He invented the world's first reflecting telescope. The Hubble telescope is a reflecting telescope. The idea is Newton's. He built it with his hands. He built many things. He conducted all his experiments on light by creating his own apparatus. When he conducted those experiments on light, he discovered the inverse square law for light intensity. That is what led him to gravitation. Now, had he not done all this with his hands, he would never have done what he did. That is the thing. Knowledge and skills go hand in hand. I told you, you know, there is a deep mathematical theory called the theory of braids. You know where it comes from? It comes from braiding hair, braiding human hair. The braids that women tie with their hair, that's where it comes from. And it's evolved into a deep theory from this skill. Similarly, there is another deep mathematical theory called knot theory. It comes from tying all kinds of knots with ropes. And where does it go now? That theory helps us understand DNA and genetics. So skills should never be separated from knowledge. They're just two sides of the same coin. India is making a terrible mistake. To each his own, give them exposure to both and how they intermingle. Then whosoever wants to become a skilled craftsperson moves in one direction and the other one moves in the other direction. Or some people will stay with both like Einstein did. Give them the freedom. Why do you do this to them? I'm so sorry, and I'm glad you asked that question.
Thank you, sir. So with this, we come to the end of the moderator's questions, and we'll now be moving on to the questions which were sent in via the Google form to us. We have decided to feature two of them. Can I request Ms. Ritika Joshi to start the video and unmute herself and go ahead with her question?
Well, thank you, sir. It was really an insightful speech by you. So, though I think that I posed the question which might not fit in the context which you talked about. So you talked about ancient education system, then modern education system, and the onus of teaching lie on the educators, right? We were talking about great educators in a way. But do you think that a system today, it's not only about a system, the way a scenario is, does it even promote or encourage good educators? There are so many bottlenecks. You have wide administrative experience being an XVC, and you might be aware of some of it. But anyhow, my question was that because it also talked about e-learning and open online learning platform, they are so competitive, right? I mean, you can simply have very easy access to the videos from Yale, MIT. I mean, where do you even locate Indian universities in here? And you partly answered that when you were talking about that we must learn how to cheat the web. And also, do you think that somehow, because we have students from various socio-educational background, or there could be language barrier, it somehow also impede educators to give their best in the electronic domain? So that was what I was asking, and thank you so much.
Okay, well, I mean, you sort of built in a whole array of questions here, central to a theme. But yes, I agree with most of it. I mean, if you're saying that it's easy to bring about any kind of reform, I mean, I don't know how many of you are aware, but I was threatened with arrest. So, I mean, it's never an easy thing. But you have to stay the course if you believe in something. And then you have to be ready to pay a price. So that's one part. The other part is that Yes, I mean, in India particularly, even at Delhi University, I learned that more than 65% of my students come from a Hindi medium background, and all our teaching was happening in the English medium. Forget what's happening on the web. Here in our so-called very proud face-to-face blackboard teaching and textbooks, everything is in the English medium, and 65 to 70% students are from the Hindi medium. They were having a hard time. They were a demoralized lot. Universities have to be sensitive towards these things. And I'm telling you, if we don't, not only will the world leave us far behind, we will leave ourselves far behind in our own eyes, and the country will suffer. Education needs a strong impetus based on these lines. With technology, you can do a million things. Those students for whom Hindi was not accessible, we started getting books translated into Hindi at a rapid rate. We started having notes prepared in Hindi. And to those students who had access to laptops, we put everything up on the web. So at least they began to have access. And I remember talking to many students who told me how much it had begun to benefit them. So that's how you bring technology into play and make it all free for those who cannot afford it. You can't charge for education if they can't pay for it.
All right, thank you, sir. Just one more thing, very like a very small question. Teaching as a professional not rated very highly among the youth. They don't aspire to be educators someday. I think that this is also precisely one of the reason that we don't have enough brilliant mind out there who have enough IQ and EQ. Because teaching it is. I mean, it's a tough job, really. So, can you suggest something, or like, I mean, what do you think about it? How to make teaching profession aspirational in some way?
I really wish I could give you an answer to that. I think teaching conditions are reasonable in India compared to what they used to be. When I started out as a teacher, you know what my salary was? It's 1,400 rupees a month. And of course, I mean, there was a fair, quite some time back, but even then, by Indian standards, 1,400 was nothing. But of course, I didn't come here to make money or anything. My point is this: we need to be sort of create good conditions for our teachers. But generally, for instance, at Delhi University, we've had fairly good conditions for teachers. We've been better off, and we do attract good minds. It's not that. The point is that we create everything in our own images. We studied maths the way it was taught on a blackboard with textbooks, and has no connection to the real world. India suffers so much because it cannot make its own aeroplanes. Do you know in mathematics they teach this discipline called fluid dynamics? It's all about building aeroplanes. Not one student have I encountered studying fluid dynamics who knows that this is connected to building aeroplanes. He is just taught on the board. He memorizes the things. He has no idea that this is a real world subject. That is the tragedy. You start doing that. If teachers start doing that instead of this strange rote learning process, then people will be attracted to respect teachers also.
Right.
Thank you very much, sir. Our next question is from Kanishk Singh. If you could go ahead, unmute yourselves and ask your question, please. Kanishk.
Right. Sir, you talked about in your speech that how the government is running out of money to sponsor education, and like subsidies are not really making sense. So my question is sort of related to that. And another thing that you pointed out was in terms of how Yale and other successful institutions in the United States and in the UK have been successful because they have been given a free hand and not been, tied by the government. So my question is the way forward or a solution to education reform in India a free market in higher education?
Not entirely free market, Kanish. I would never advocate that because then you will leave out so many millions who cannot afford. I have always advocated, first of all, to bring down the costs. We need a hybrid model, and also it's far more productive. What do I mean by a hybrid model? Don't rely so much on the brick and mortar model because it beyond a point it is counterproductive. The use of technology is far more productive if we do it the right way. If we do it the correct and intelligent way, it is far more productive than the brick and mortar thing. But create a hybrid so that costs get controlled a great deal. But I'm not doing it for the sake of cost. It's just a good outcome. I'm doing it because there's a far better pedagogy with it. And then every institution must ensure that you have a structure by which those who cannot pay and cannot sort of afford it are given a chance to at least acquire that which is due them by virtue of being citizens of India. For that, there is enough money in this country, believe me. Believe me, we are not a poor country. We have enough money. It's just that government has sort of been busy, and not just Indian government, governments across the world are finding that putting too much into education has really not worked for them. That's what they think. But on the other hand, they've allowed institutions to flourish. What has happened in India, and it didn't happen just one time a few years ago, consistently we have neglected education. We haven't created the right environment. We're so obsessed with creating a policy. Even this government is obsessed with creating a policy. It's going to be so counterproductive. The only policy you should have is to give some freedom. And then, have mechanisms that enable our authorities that, for instance, the UGC or the AICD, what are they called? They're called regulatory authorities. There's a schoolmaster or, wo foot rule leke ja raha hai, tumko punish karne. I mean, they should be given it's a misnomer. They should be made enabling institutions.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Right.
I think
Thank
I
you.
got the
We
answer
will
which I
not be
wanted.
entertaining follow-ups. Sorry. Yeah. So all those who are joining us via Facebook and
Naitik, we cannot hear you.
yeah, all those who are joining us via Facebook and YouTube, I request you all to post your questions in the live chat so that they can be transferred by our webmaster to the chat box here. Now we'll be taking open questions from the audience posted in the chat box. Sir, if we take a bunch of questions, like 2 or 3, is that fine? And then you can answer all of them?
You can take them. Whether I can answer or not, only time will tell.
Right, sir. So we'll be taking 3 questions at a time. The first 3 will be having Shrishti, Dhruv, and Pakis. Shrishti, De, Dhruv, Kaushik, and Pakis Khan. One by one, could you please unmute yourself, start the videos, and ask your question?
Yes. Hello. Good afternoon, sir. My question to you is, how effective do you think the student-teacher relationship is in order to change the prospect of, conventional Indian education system, considering the requirement for a balance to administer any structural changes in the system?
Well, that's a very, very profound question. Somewhere we must understand that we teachers are not the repositories of all wisdom and knowledge. We're just a little better equipped. We have a little more experience in life. And so we are a little better suited to take younger people along the journey. But we are also fellow journeymen. If a teacher becomes a little more humble in this context and is not afraid of saying, I don't know, let us find out, let me think, it becomes much better. We teachers tend to come into classrooms smug with the knowledge that what I'm going to give you is the best and there's nothing else you need to know. And then we begin to dictate notes, or we write on the board, and we do not leave room for genuine learning. Genuine learning will not give you the ultimate in knowledge. As I said repeatedly, there is nothing like the ultimate in knowledge. Genuine learning teaches you how to discern between good and bad, between right and wrong, between useful and not so useful. And then you begin to grow on your own. That is unfortunately not happening. A teacher-student relationship should be centered around this principle.
Right. Dhruv and Pakis, please.
Good afternoon, sir. It was generally a very enlightening lecture for you. Your emphasis on the individual experience, a personal experience that one takes on to find their drumbeat was really touching, I believe. But then again, it prompted me to think about a question that often in India, for that matter, what happens is the society tends to dictate what the youth should go on to do in their lives, what they want to. Their dreams are dictated by the society more often than not. What can we do to change that?
Dhruv, my suggestion is, if you really wish to discover your drumbeat, then as Gandhi said, no matter what the cost, I will adhere to this. Be ready to pay a price. Nothing comes easy in life. You have to give something to get something. So society will be there to discourage you. Ramanujan's father used to be so upset with him. Why does he waste all his time doing mathematics on a slate? So much so that eventually Ramanujan had to begin to hide in the house under the stairway or something so that his father could not see him do mathematics. So this will always be there. Society. I mean, Einstein was so discouraged he couldn't get a job. He became a patent clerk. And that's where he made all those earth-shaking discoveries. As patent clerk, third class, he solved 3 of the most important mysteries of nature. And then he applied for promotion to patent clerk, second class, and he was failed. He was rejected. Imagine. So this will happen. But if you believe in yourself, stay the course, don't worry too much about the world. Yes, the world will create trouble for you. I agree with you. But one has to be strong. I mean, Tendulkar wasn't a success in day one. To come to that level, he had to work so hard. I'm sure his parents must have been worried that he's not going to study much and he won't have a degree. What will he do in life? But he stayed with it, and we have his example also.
Right. Pakis Khan, please.
Good afternoon, sir. My question is especially talking about the CBCS system that has been introduced by UGC on all the universities across country. Do you think accounting for the diversity that our country has from the perspective of policy making, should academic autonomy be a way to facilitate a progressive educational system in India, like academic autonomy for all educational institutions?
Absolutely, Pakis. I believe, I agree with you totally. I mean, you know, Harvard and MIT are almost facing each other. They're very close in physical proximity. Harvard teaches mathematics in its own way to first-year students, and MIT teaches it mathematics to first-year students in its own way. 2 totally different paths. They're not doing the same thing, whereas the choice-based credit system, as little as I've understood, prescribes almost everything as the same for all universities. They're going to kill diversity, and you know, if you don't have diversity, as evolution says, then you will destroy everything. In the long run, you'll all be gone. Yes, I agree with you. You must give autonomy to a large extent. And you know, who decides that you have to have a 2-year degree or a 3-year degree or a degree at all? I mean, we need to start thinking about that also. Who said that a bachelor's degree must be 3 years or 4 years or 2 years? Let the student who's learning decide, I've had enough, now I wish to go. And if at all the world wants a certificate, let my institution give me one. If it doesn't, I don't care. But no, we are always in this straitjacketed situation. I don't believe in that. I personally don't believe.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we have now done with the first set of questions, sir, and it is already 12:40. We hope we are not taking a lot of your time, and we can continue on with another set or 2.
Yeah, you can. You will hear from my lawyers later, but you can.
Right. So, Shabdita.
Thank you very much, sir. We will now recognize 2 more questions. The first question is from Ria Jeff, and the second question is from Neelam Barua. Ria, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. So my question is, whenever we think about, or whenever teachers teach us all the philosophy and political thought papers, most of us usually think about philosophers like Nietzsche or Rousseau or Kant, for example. So speaking on that, have we failed the rich diversity of philosophers and historians and mathematicians that we have had in our country?
Yes. I believe that we are too oriented towards the West. I think we need to draw a balance. We need to sort of rethink these things. And honestly, I don't even know what is a philosopher. Why is something or someone called a philosopher, or why is something called philosophy and why not? So we shouldn't allow ourselves to be bound too much or restricted too much. You know, Kabir, don't you think Kabir was a great philosopher? I don't know if they ever study Kabir from the philosopher's viewpoint in India. I have no knowledge. I'm not into what they do. But there is so much insight that you get by just looking at what Kabir had to say. And don't just go by his couplets. Kabir ने दोहे बहुत लिखे हैं, परंतु उनकी कुछ लंबी लंबी कविताएं हैं, बड़ी जबरदस्त है, बड़ी गहराई के साथ है. गांधी जी की एक बहुत फेवरेट हिम थी कबीर की, जीनी जीनी चदरिया जीनी जीनी Oh my God, every time I listen to it, I get a new perspective on life from him. I wish we could be a little more open on this. I agree with you, yes.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is from Neelam Barua. Could you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Okay, good afternoon, sir. Sir, I'd like to ask a question. So, can you state me the few reforms that are needed to make the change from the conventional educational system to the e-learning mode during this COVID-19 pandemic crisis? As because maximum of our students community belong to the remote parts of the country.
Yeah, this is right now offhand. I know that many students have gone away to rural areas, and I'm in touch with some of my students at Delhi University. And for instance, when I send them some kind of query on the web, on email, or otherwise, it takes some time for them to get back to me because they tell me that the connections are not so good. So it is a problem, unless we have good connectivity, everything collapses. But even then, so let us not make it time bound so much. I wish I could make more of a detailed statement on this. But why are we always in this hurry that I must do this by this date? Let's be a little more flexible. You have a whole life before you. When I was an undergraduate at Delhi University, let me tell you what happened. I was at St. Stephen's College, a college that is known for discipline, so-called. Within a month of my joining, the students went on a strike. It was never heard of in St. Stephen's, and it has never happened after. And I had nothing to do with it, but they went on a strike for more than a week. Teaching was shut. Then, when the strike ended, suddenly the teachers of Delhi University went on a strike. And they went on a strike for more than a week again. And when that ended, suddenly there was a huge student disturbance in Delhi University. Huge. Major violence. This was in my first year. And the university was shut for more than 3 months. No teaching happened. And yet, in the longer perspective, it did not harm any of us. None of us. We all graduated on time. I was in my first year. The third year graduated on time. We are so worried that we haven't taught enough. Forget that. No matter how much you teach, it will never be enough. Number one. Number two, there are ways of managing and adjusting a little bit. And even if you get delayed by 3, 4, 5 months, in the long run, it's not going to make a difference. No company is really hiring right now. Nobody is in a situation to give you a job straight away, nor are universities abroad admitting students and saying, come now, otherwise you lost your position. Everyone is deferring things. So we should also not be in such a hurry. And so if I send something to my students, I don't tell them I want it back by tomorrow. I wait for them to get back. And sometimes when the line is better, then I'm able to communicate in a better way. When it is not, then I just wait. So we need to sort of play it by the ear.
Thank you very much, sir. That brings us to the end of our question and answer round. Back to Nath.
Yeah, I think we can take 2 more questions. Probably we have Sakshi Pachori and we have Siddharth. Yes. Sakshi Pachori, could you please unmute your microphone and go ahead with your question?
Good afternoon, everyone. So my question is
Sakshi, I'm not able to hear you. I hope it's not my connection.
Sakshi,
hello,
your
Sakshi.
connection is a bit patchy. Sakshi, could you please switch off your video?
Can everyone hear me? Shabdita, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. It seems that Sakshi's internet connection is a bit patchy. I will read out her question that is in the chat box. Sakshi asks, when scientists like Mr. Nambi Narayan were falsely charged and were imprisoned for 12 years in regard to corruption and other workplace problems, is it difficult for a general student to go away from cramming bookish knowledge and continue with their field of interest? What are your views regarding this?
Let me just quote Shakespeare on this. I mean, not me, this is Shakespeare talking. Great man. What he says is, and This above all else, to thine own self be true, and you will never be false to any man. So be true to yourself. अपने आवाज को सुनो. इतना मत चिंता करो कि किसके साथ क्या हुआ क्या नहीं हुआ. इतना ज्यादा सोचने लगोगे ना, तो जैसे उर्दू में एक कविता है कि इस राह में तुम्हें डराएंगे लोग के बड़े रहजन हैं. You know what रहजन are? You know, highway bandits. इस राह में तुम्हें डराएंगे रहजन है. कुछ मत करो तुम. तो कुछ तो करना है. कुछ करके जाओ, वरना जीते क्यों हो. So don't worry better, don't worry too much. Just be true to yourself, stay the course. औरों के साथ क्या हुआ, it may have been very unfortunate, but जरूरी नहीं कि सबके साथ होगा. Have a little faith.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Siddharth.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is from Siddharth.
Good afternoon, sir. So my question is that when we look at various people, you talked about how geniuses go unrecognized in the country. Even when we look today, there are a lot of examples where various Indian people who are not recognized within our society, they go to the West and they become very successful. For example, Sundar Pichai, who was not really recognized in the IT sector of our country, but now he's the CEO. He's the CEO of Google. And that's my question. Does this is this because of failing of our society or our education job dynamic? What is the reason behind this?
You know, I really don't know exactly what happened with Sundar Pichai, and there is always this feeling that people have that a lot of talent leaves India on a regular basis. But let me assure you, there is enormous talent that resides in India. Okay, then the next part is, as you say, does it get recognized or does it get thrown by the wayside? Some of it gets recognized and it's happening more and more. But my biggest suggestion to you is, you are the people who should work to bring about this change. You are the people, the young of India. And I don't advocate violence. I don't advocate violent revolutions. I'm not a believer in that. Follow the Gandhian path, stay the course, and try and bring about changes. Even if they don't happen in your lifetime, at least you will have led a fulfilled life that you tried to live out that which you believed in. So, and I believe that much good will happen in India. Changes are happening. ये भारत वर्ष है, ये रुक नहीं सकता है. इसकी यात्रा अनादिकाल से चल रही है. हमारे जैसे लोग आएंगे जाएंगे. भारत महायज्ञ चलता रहेगा. Don't worry too much. Do your thing and believe in what you do.
Thank you, sir. So we then now move on to the last question. It is from Utkarsh Sharma, and we are really sorry for those questions we could not take today. Utkarsh Sharma, could you please unmute yourself and go ahead with the question?
Yes, good afternoon, sir, and good afternoon to everyone else. So, to fine-tune Dhruv's question, which he posed a little earlier, and Sakshi, who posed a question just a couple of questions before mine, I believe. Contemporary education and particularly research is dominated by market demands, as in, especially say right now, like all medical research is geared towards like finding a vaccine for COVID-19, say, for example. So which is what alienates sort of this rigorous autonomous research that we see, and when we talk about these like scientists from before who like went on their own path following the drumbeat, as it were. So which is what alienates rigorous autonomous research rather than a demand based research. So I think we do need more academic autonomy, but more financial support than ever, with the number of students increasing, and comparatively in comparison with the number of students, the base for higher education is shrinking. So I would like to hear your comments on this, sir.
Oh God, so you really brought in a universe of questions, Utkarsh, and I think you have too much faith in my wisdom. I don't think I can handle this, but let me try my best. So, first of all, you know, Utkarsh, I mean, yes, you may say that everybody is now focused on the COVID-19 crisis and that is market-driven. By the way, I mean, it's very important that we focus on the COVID-19 crisis. Otherwise,
yes, sir, absolutely.
There may be no human race left, to focus on anything. So that kind of market-driven forces are also necessary sometimes. They're not a bad thing. And, many good things are coming out of this business of trying to handle the COVID-19 crisis. Life sciences have received a fillip. Everyone has become aware. How do you create vaccines? What is DNA? What is RNA? What is monoclonal antibody? Terms are being embedded in the minds of the young. It is affecting their subconscious. And believe me, they will move towards good things, not just with COVID, but generally for good research. So that part is not too worrisome. Yes, also, there is nothing like a free lunch in this world. You want to do something, you have to pay for it, or someone will pay you, and then you do something that he wants. So you have to balance that. But generally, in academic institutions, generally you do get some support to do good things, provided you can convince people that they are good things. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It always happens. In the long run, it evens out, and some people may suffer, but not always and not all the time. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Yes, the one thing that worries me is that, when the COVID-19 crisis began to happen in India, and it was already happening in other parts of the world, I just did a quick study of the websites of all our universities and our medical institutions. You're not going to believe this. I don't know how many of you did that. I went to the website. A famed medical university. I looked at the website. The first thing they write over there is last updated 3 months ago. Can you believe that? That's what they had. I thought they'll have something on COVID, something that they're working on a vaccine. No, nothing. Important notice. So I clicked on that. It said this tender will be opened on this day. That tender was opened on that day. That's all. Do you see that? As institutions, we are failing ourselves and our nation and our society. I looked at Oxford University. They were already way ahead in the race to create a vaccine, and they had created an epidemiological model. Imperial College had done that. At MIT, they were doing this. Harvard was in the race to create a vaccine. Where were we? Nowhere. We suddenly woke up, we'll make a test, and then we'll not make a test, and we haven't gotten too far with it. So institutions must be geared to be quick on their feet. And that only happens when you're vibrant inside and connected always to the needs and challenges of the nation and of society. Unfortunately, we are not. I looked at so many websites of so many universities and so many medical institutions. Not one of them was even addressing the COVID crisis. So just think about that time. Now they may have done it. But I thought they should have done it when it had begun to attack India. They hadn't done it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Before I call on Shankar sir for today's vote of thanks, let me, on behalf of caucus, say that it was a privilege to host you today and hear you out. Probably we can host you again sometime when we tide over with this crisis in person in our college. We'll really look forward to it if we get that opportunity.
Sure.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I think you're very important point, sir. We would like this to continue. It's been so inspiring. I'm sure I can see it on the faces, whichever faces I can see at the moment. It's just looking so satisfactory, and it's really, really very inspiring. So we should continue with this. I hope we are able to get that chance on your side, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's always a privilege to be in your college, always.
So much, sir. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Now I call upon Shankar sir to deliver the vote of thanks for the day. Sir. Sir, you will have
So
to.
your mic is off.
Have I unmuted myself? Can I be audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir. It has always been a delight to listen to you, and if alongside we can also watch you, as is the case on this platform, it's an extra delight, because I'm reminded of one interview that Kapil Dev, the legendary cricketer, was doing with one of the journalists, and this journalist asked Kapil Dev that now that you have retired, and where will India get a bowler like you, an all-rounder like you? And he said that, well, my parents are too old, so guess for yourself. So it's like the visual quotient of you is also very proverbially suited for the kind of exercise that you are engaged in. Your movement of hands and the kind of things that you bring alongside what you verbally emphasize is something that enchants us as viewers. And this is something that I could discern yesterday itself when the principal almost went frantic. She called me up and said, "Ki, Arey Dinesh sir, kal ka hi program confirm ho gaya hai, and we have very little time. What do we do? Can we tell him to postpone it for a day or two so that we can be adequately ready? We can advertise and so forth." I said, "Ki, why are you worried? I mean, the person, the speaker is a rock star in his own rights, and the students beneath are such a wonderful, efficient lot of people." I spoke to Shabdita. I said, "Ki, is your poster ready?" And she said, "Ki, sir, poster to both." I looked at the poster. I said, "Ki, so quickly you could make out such a brilliant poster." He said, "Ki, sir, look at his looks. He is so handsome." And so quite a few things got sorted, automatically itself. So that's the advantage of having a star speaker like you for an event like this. It will do us good. It's a formal thing, so I need to run through the names from the students. We have Natik, Shanmukha, Shabdita, Pranav, Ria, Siddharth, Sumit.
Sir, we have lost your
Lost.
Yes, yes, we lost.
Yeah. Go.
Okay, I'm back. I'm back. So, yeah, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So these are a set of students who were behind the scene, doing things very efficiently. It was a seamless event, shorn of any disturbance, much of disturbance, a little bit of it on account of bandwidth and so forth. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Maybe if you switch off your video, you'll become far more.
Yeah. Let me do that. Yeah. Okay. Of course, the principal, the vice principal, the IQAC director, Dr. Shalini Suryanarayan, and particularly Dr. Ravinandan. He gave me this opportunity to share dais with my idol. And you would correct me, it's not dais, it's internet, but this is the new real virtual state that we talk of these days. So real estate is gone. Virtual estate is the new state that we all crave for. And I'm extremely thankful to Ravinandan to have done this, to have given me this opportunity. Of course, I'll return the gesture to you very soon. The participants, the quality of the questions were excellent, and special thanks to them. The attendees, I could run through the list that I could see on Zoom. Of course, there were quite a few logged on to YouTube and other platforms. They were simultaneously running. So it was very good. People from different disciplines were there. We had faculties hooked on to this in good number. Of course, students drawn from different disciplines, and it gelled well with the kind of focus and emphasis that you gave in your presentation. And it was wonderful. I could see principal's remarks on the chat. She wants to have more of you. And if we could get a series done on this, of course, we will reach out to you. We don't leave good people. So as an institution, we should not be leaving good people. So we will keep bothering you, sir. And this is what I had to say as the vote of thanks. And I again thank you for delighting us over and over again. And this was no different from what you proverbially keep doing to us, the listeners. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Shivastal, thank you very much. Dr. Shankar, thank you. Thank you, Naitik. Thank you, Shabdita. I really enjoyed this, and I look forward to the day when I can physically visit your college. You know, your college has I have many fond memories of your college from my student days. So I look forward to a visit again. Thank you much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Honor for us, sir. Although the last time you visited our college was when you came for an inspection when you were the Vice-Chancellor and you caught some of us not teaching. But of course, you came for the foundation laying also, sir. But that was such a nice memory of that we have. And it's been an absolute Sunday treat for us today. I mean, we will never be able to forget this. And a very great interaction, as Shankar has already pointed out. The students' questions were, I thought, of a good scale, very good level, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed. Thanks once again, sir. Thank you very much.
Right. Before we conclude, let me announce that we had been live tweeting this, and all the videos will be available on Facebook, YouTube. The transcript will be available on our blog, caucusdiscussions.wordpress.com. We hope to host you soon again with another eminent speaker, and we thank you, Professor Singh, for coming with us today and joining us today. Thank you so much, and goodbye for Caucus from
Thank
Caucus
you.
for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God knows.